My mom's 65th birthday was supposed to be the biggest family event of the year. Gold balloons, a fancy venue, professional catering. The whole family talking about it for months. And honestly, nobody was more excited than my 12-year-old daughter, Emma. For weeks, she'd been asking me what she should wear, whether Grandma would like the birthday card she made, whether she should buy flowers or chocolates. She even spent an entire Saturday afternoon making a handmade birthday card with glitter all over our kitchen table. I still remember her holding it up and smiling. "Think Grandma's gonna love it?" "Of course she will," I said. At the time, I actually believed that. I should have known better, because if there's one thing I've learned about my mother, Linda Carter, it's this. When she wants to hurt someone, she never does it loudly. She does it politely, with a smile. The kind of smile that makes everyone else think you're overreacting. The dinner was held at my parents' house the following Sunday. The dining room looked like something out of a magazine. Candles, fresh flowers, gold decorations already waiting for the party week. My sister Jessica was there with her 2 kids. My dad Robert sat at the end of the table quietly picking at his food. And Emma sat beside me. Happy, excited, completely unaware. Mom stood up holding a glass of wine. "Since everyone's here," she announced, "I thought we'd go over the final birthday plans." Everybody started talking at once. Which cousins were coming, which church friends were invited, where everyone would sit, what food would be served, normal family stuff. Then I noticed something strange. Was that the worst part wasn't what Mom said at dinner. The worst part was what she had been saying behind our backs for years. And 2 days later, the drive home was painfully quiet. Usually Emma talked about everything. School, soccer practice, funny TikToks she'd seen with her friends. But that night, nothing. She just stared out the passenger window while the streetlights slid across her face. I kept waiting for her to say something. Anything. Instead, she hugged the birthday card she'd made for Grandma against her chest like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. About 10 minutes later, she finally spoke. "Mom?" Her voice was so soft I almost missed it. "Yeah, sweetheart?" She hesitated, then asked the question every parent dreads. "Did I do something wrong?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "No." She looked at me. "Then why doesn't Grandma want me there?" I wished I had an answer that wouldn't break her heart. Instead, I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Kids always blame themselves first. That's what made it so heartbreaking. When we got home, Emma quietly walked upstairs. No TV, no snacks, no music, just straight to her room. I gave her some space. About 20 minutes later, I went upstairs to check on her. Her bedroom door was halfway open. She didn't know I was standing there. She was sitting on the floor beside her bed. The handmade birthday card was in her lap. She stared at it for a long time. Then, very carefully, she folded it in half and tore it straight down the middle. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly, like she'd accepted that it didn't matter anymore. She dropped both pieces into the trash can, then climbed into bed without saying another word. I stood in the hallway, completely frozen. That was the moment I realized. My mother hadn't just hurt me. She'd taught my daughter she wasn't worth loving, and I couldn't let that happen again. The next morning, I canceled every appointment I could. I stayed home with Emma. We made pancakes together, watched old Disney movies, tried to pretend everything was normal. But every now and then, I'd catch her staring at her phone, waiting, maybe hoping Grandma would text. She never did. Not once. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. It was my sister Jessica. "Jessica, don't make this into a huge family drama." I stared at the message. A few seconds later, another one arrived. "Mom didn't mean anything by it." Then another. "It's just one birthday party." One birthday party? No, it wasn't. It was 12 years of watching my daughter get treated differently. The smaller Christmas presents, the forgotten birthdays, the canceled sleepovers, the excuses, the favoritism. I'd ignored all of it because I wanted peace. Not anymore. I was about to reply when another notification appeared. It wasn't from Jessica. It was from my niece Ava, 16 years old, sweet kid, one of the only people in the family who'd always been kind to Emma. Her message simply said, "Aunt Sarah, I think you need to see this." Below it, a screenshot. I opened it. It was a private family group chat, one I'd never even known existed. At the top, the group name read, "Sunday Crew." I wasn't in it. Dad wasn't in it. Emma definitely wasn't in it. Only Mom. Jessica, a couple of aunts, and a few close family friends. I started scrolling. The newest message was from my mom. "Don't worry. Sarah will calm down," Jessica replied almost immediately. "She always does." Then came another message from Mom. "She'll still pay for the party. She always does." I stopped breathing. They weren't worried about losing me. They were worried about losing my money. I kept scrolling. Then, I found the message that made my stomach drop. Mom had written it the night after our family dinner, only 6 words. "Emma isn't really one of ours." I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, hoping somehow the words would change. They didn't. Below it, Jessica had replied with a thumbs-up emoji. My hands started shaking. Not because I was angry. Because everything suddenly made sense. This had never been about one birthday party. It had been happening for years, and I had been too busy trying to keep everyone happy to see it. I looked upstairs toward Emma's room, then back at the phone, for the first time in my life. I wasn't thinking like a daughter. I was thinking like a mother, and I knew exactly what I had to do next, because my family had forgotten one very important detail. They weren't the ones keeping this family together. I was. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mom's voice. "Emma isn't invited." And then Emma's question echoed right behind it. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" No child should ever have to ask that. The next morning, after I dropped Emma off at school, I parked outside a small coffee shop instead of driving to work. I opened the screenshots Ava had sent me. There were dozens of messages in the family group chat. At first, it looked like normal family conversations, birthday planning, church events, holiday dinners. But after a few minutes, I noticed something. Every time my name appeared, it was connected to money. "Sarah will cover it. Ask Sarah. She always pays." Put it on Sarah's card. Not one message asked how I was doing. Not one thanked me. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was an ATM. Then I found messages from Easter. Jessica had written, "Let's just buy baskets for my kids this year. Emma's getting older anyway." Mom replied, "Good idea. Sarah won't make a fuss." I froze. Emma had been 11. She'd watched her cousins open huge Easter baskets while Grandma handed her a single chocolate bunny. I remembered making excuses that day. Grandma probably forgot. No, she hadn't forgotten. She'd planned it. I kept scrolling. Christmas. Birthdays. Family barbecues. The same pattern over and over again. Emma was always treated differently. And every time, I'd convince myself it wasn't intentional. I was wrong. Then I found the message that changed everything. Jessica asked, "Who's paying the balance for Mom's birthday party?" Mom replied almost instantly, "Sarah already paid the deposit. The rest goes on her card Friday." I stared at the screen. Friday? That was only 3 days away. I grabbed the venue contract from my purse. Sure enough, the remaining balance, $2,200, was set to charge my credit card automatically. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. They excluded my daughter and still expected me to pay for the party. Right then, my phone rang. "Mom," I answered. Her voice was sweeter than ever. "Hi, sweetheart. Just making sure everything's ready for Friday." No apology. No mention of Emma. Just the payment. I took a deep breath. Then I smiled. "Mom, I won't be paying for your birthday party." There was complete silence. Then her voice turned cold. "What did you just say?" I looked out the windshield and replied calmly. I said, "You'll need another way to pay." What she didn't know was that canceling the payment was only the beginning. The real surprise was still sitting in my lawyer's office. Mom was passing around printed guest lists, one for each table. Emma leaned over to look. Her smile slowly disappeared. There was no name for her. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe Grandma forgot. Maybe there was another page. Maybe... Then Mom looked directly at Emma and said the sentence that changed everything. "Emma won't be attending." The room went silent. I blinked. "What?" Mom took a sip of wine, completely calm. "Emma isn't invited to the birthday party." For a second, I honestly thought I misunderstood. I laughed nervously. "Okay. Funny joke." Nobody laughed. Not Jessica, not Dad, not anyone. Mom simply put her glass down. "The venue has limited seating." I stared at her. Limited seating? That's right. I looked around the table. There were literally empty chairs. 2 of them. Right there, visible to everyone. Even Emma noticed. Mom continued speaking as if she were discussing the weather. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. She was excluding a 12-year-old child, and somehow it wasn't personal. I could feel heat rising into my chest, but before I could say anything, I looked at Emma, and my anger disappeared because she wasn't crying. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't even speaking. She just sat there, frozen, completely frozen, like someone had pressed pause on her. That hurt more than if she'd cried. Way more. Mom noticed too, but she didn't care. She picked up her fork. Let's move on. Move on. Like my daughter hadn't just been humiliated in front of the entire family. Jessica suddenly found her mashed potatoes fascinating. Dad stared into his water glass. Nobody said a word. Nobody defended her. Nobody asked why. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This had been planned. Everybody at that table already knew. Everybody except me. Everybody except Emma. I slowly folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, and stood up. Mom frowned. What are you doing? I grabbed my purse, then reached for Emma's hand. We're leaving. Oh, don't be dramatic, Mom sighed. There it was. The word she always used whenever somebody refused to accept her behavior. Dramatic. I looked directly at her, for the first time all evening, and smiled. A calm smile, the kind that made people nervous. No, I said quietly. I'm finally paying attention. Then I turned to Emma. Come on, sweetheart. Without saying a word, she stood up immediately, like she'd been waiting for someone to rescue her. And that broke my heart, because no child should ever know that feeling. As we walked toward the door, Mom called after me. You're seriously leaving over this? I stopped, just long enough to answer. No. I looked back. This isn't about a party. Then I opened the front door and left. After hanging up on my mom, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to fix the damage she'd caused. I was finally letting her deal with the consequences. Instead of driving back to my office, I headed downtown. There was one place I needed to go, a law office. The receptionist smiled. Ms. Mitchell? Ms. Hayes is ready for you. A few moments later, I sat across from Olivia Hayes, one of the best real estate attorneys in town. She looked at me and asked, So, what can I help you with today? I pulled a folder out of my bag and placed it on her desk. Inside was the deed to my parents' house. She looked down at it, then back at me. You own this property? I do. She flipped through the paperwork. No mortgage, no lines. Then she looked confused. So, are you selling it? I shook my head. No, I want to transfer it. She raised an eyebrow. To who? My parents. For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she asked the question everyone else would have asked. After everything they've done. Why would you give them the house? I smiled. Because I don't want them living in my house anymore. She leaned back, waiting for me to explain. I've paid the taxes. I've paid the insurance. I've paid every repair for 6 years. They call it their home. But it's never really been theirs. Olivia slowly nodded. I think I understand. I don't want revenge. I want freedom. She closed the file and picked up her pen. We can have everything ready before the birthday party. I looked out the office window for a moment. Then I said something that even surprised me. I don't want them to know until the party. Olivia smiled. A public surprise? I nodded. Exactly. She laughed softly. I've been practicing law for 18 years. I've never had a client do something like this. As I stood to leave, she handed me a checklist. We'll prepare the transfer documents. All you'll need to do is decide how you want to deliver them. I took the folder, smiled, and said, I already know, because while my family was busy planning balloons, I was planning something they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The next morning, I walked into my office like it was any other Friday, coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. But before I answered a single email, I picked up my phone. First call, the birthday venue. A cheerful woman answered. Good morning, Hartwell Gardens. How can I help you? Hi, I said. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I need to remove my credit card from a reservation. She asked for the event details. A few seconds later, she found it. Oh yes, Linda Carter's birthday party. That's the one. I'd like my payment method removed. There was a brief pause. Certainly, ma'am. Will the host be providing another card today? I smiled. The host can handle the balance herself. No problem. We'll contact Ms. Carter directly. Perfect. The call lasted less than 3 minutes. Just like that, the automatic payment was gone. No yelling, no fighting, just one simple phone call. About 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. Mom, I already knew why. I answered anyway. Sarah. Her voice was sharp. The venue just called me. I know. What do you mean you know? I removed my card. You embarrassed me. I stayed calm. No, Mom. I just stopped paying. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. You've always paid. Not anymore. Her breathing got heavier. What am I supposed to tell everyone? I leaned back in my chair. The truth. Tell them you're paying for your own birthday. Silence. Then she whispered, I can't believe you're doing this to your own mother. Before I could answer, she hung up. Less than a minute later, Jessica called. She didn't even say hello. What is wrong with you? Nothing. Mom's crying. I cried too, when Emma was excluded. Jessica sighed dramatically. Oh my gosh, Sarah. It was just one party. I laughed quietly. No, it was 12 years. What does that even mean? It means this didn't start last week. It started the day everyone decided my daughter mattered less. Jessica didn't answer. Instead, she changed the subject. So, are you seriously not paying? No, and I'm not changing my mind. She scoffed. You're making the whole family look bad. I smiled. No, the family did that all by themselves. I ended the call before she could argue again. For the rest of the afternoon, nobody else called, which told me something important. They weren't trying to fix what happened to Emma. They were only trying to fix the bill, and that made my next decision even easier. Because while they were scrambling to save the party, the package from Olivia Hayes was already on its way. Inside it was the one document that would change everything. Monday morning, Olivia Hayes called. Everything's ready. I drove straight to her office. She slid a thick envelope across the desk. Inside were the signed transfer documents, the property deed, and one final page that officially released me from every responsibility tied to the house. Olivia looked at me. Once your parents sign these, the house is legally theirs. I nodded. That's exactly what I want. She studied my face for a second. You know they'll also become responsible for the property. Taxes, insurance, repairs, everything. I know. They can't come back later and ask you to cover those expenses. I know. She smiled. You've thought this through. I hadn't just thought it through. I'd lived it for 6 years. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. Mom, I ignored it. Then Jessica called. Ignored. Dad called. Ignored. A minute later, a text from Mom appeared. Please answer. We need to talk. Need. Funny how that word only showed up when they needed something from me. Not once had anyone texted, How's Emma doing? Not once. That evening, I came home to find Emma doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up and smiled. A real smile this time. Mom, are we doing anything Saturday? Saturday. The day of the birthday party. I smiled back. I was thinking we could spend the whole day together. Her eyes lit up. Really? No party? I shook my head. We're going somewhere better. She jumped out of her chair and hugged me. I'd rather be with you anyway. That one sentence erased weeks of guilt. I realized something in that moment. Emma had never wanted Grandma's party. She just wanted to feel chosen. And from now on, she always would be. Later that night, I wrapped the envelope in simple black gift paper. No ribbon, no fancy bow, just a small white card. On the front I wrote, Happy birthday, Mom. Nothing else. No explanation. No signature. I sealed the box and placed it by the front door. As I stood there looking at it, my phone buzzed one last time. It was Dad. His message was short. Your mom says you're upset. Please don't make things worse. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then locked my phone without replying. Because they all thought I was trying to ruin a birthday. They couldn't have been more wrong. I wasn't ruining anything. I was ending something. 6 years of being the family's safety net. 6 years of paying for people who never appreciated me. 6 years of watching my daughter settle for less than she deserved. That ended now. And in just a few days, everyone at that party was about to find out. Saturday finally arrived. The day my mom had been waiting for all year. By 10 that morning, my phone had already buzzed 6 times. 3 missed calls from Jessica, 2 from Dad, 1 from Mom. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, Emma and I drove to her favorite breakfast spot across town. She ordered chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream. I got my usual coffee. For the first time in weeks, she looked genuinely happy. No fake smiles, no forced conversations. Just my little girl laughing at syrup all over her hands. And honestly, that was worth more than any family gathering. Around noon, Ava texted me. The party just started. A few minutes later, another message popped up. Grandma keeps asking where you are. I smiled. Of course she was. She expected me to walk through those doors at the last minute. Smile, pretend nothing had happened, and probably pay another bill before I left. Not this time. An hour later, Ava sent another update. Everyone's here. She even attached a photo. Mom stood in the middle of the room wearing an elegant black dress with a wide brim hat. Gold balloons filled the ballroom. The birthday cake sat in the center of the table. Everything looked perfect. Exactly the way she'd imagined it, until another message came through. They're asking the venue why the balance wasn't paid. I could almost picture Mom's face. The confusion, the embarrassment, the panic. She'd spent years believing I'd always clean up the mess. Today, there was no one left to rescue her. Just then, my phone rang again. Mom, this time, I answered. The second I picked up, she snapped. Where are you? Out with Emma. You need to get down here right now. Why? The venue says I owe $2,200. I stayed calm. That's because you do. Her voice shook with anger. You did this on purpose. No, I just stopped paying for things that weren't mine. You've ruined my birthday. I looked across the table at Emma. She was smiling while decorating her pancakes with strawberries. Then I quietly replied, No, Mom. You ruined your birthday the day you decided my daughter wasn't welcome. She went silent. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, So, you're really choosing her over your family? I smiled. No. I finally realized she is my family. And before she could say another word, I ended the call. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. Emma looked up at me. Everything okay? I smiled. Everything's finally getting better. She reached across the table and held my hand. Neither of us knew it yet, but across town, a small black gift box had just been placed on the birthday table, and in less than 5 minutes, my mom was about to open it in front of everyone. Back at the ballroom, the party had finally settled down. Dinner had been served. People were laughing. Music played softly in the background. Mom stood near the cake, smiling for photos as if nothing had gone wrong that week. Then the event coordinator walked over carrying a small black gift box. Linda, a package just arrived for you. Mom looked surprised. I wasn't expecting anything. Everyone turned to watch. She smiled proudly. Maybe it's from Sarah after all. Jessica laughed. I told you she'd come around. Dad looked relieved. Even the guests started clapping, thinking it was some kind of birthday surprise. Mom slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a large envelope. She frowned. What is this? She pulled out a stack of legal documents. The room grew quiet. She flipped to the first page, then the second. Her smile disappeared. Jessica stepped closer. Mom, what is it? Mom didn't answer. Her hands had started shaking. Dad took the papers from her. He adjusted his glasses and read the first line out loud. Property transfer agreement. The room instantly fell silent. Someone near the back whispered, Property? Dad kept reading. His eyes grew wider with every sentence. Finally, he looked up at Mom. Linda, this is the deed. She stared at him. No, that can't be right. Jessica grabbed the paperwork. Her face turned completely pale. Sarah transferred the house. To us. The guests looked confused. Some thought it was a gift. Others had no idea what was happening. Then Jessica reached the last page. Her voice cracked. We're responsible for all taxes, all insurance, all maintenance, and effective immediately. She looked at Mom. She isn't paying anymore. The realization hit all at once. The monthly transfers, the repairs, the bills, everything was over. Dad slowly lowered himself into a chair. I thought Sarah was just helping us. Mom whispered. She always has. No, Dad replied quietly. We just never noticed how much. At that exact moment, Mom's phone buzzed. A bank notification. The automatic transfer scheduled for the first of the month had been canceled. She looked around the room. The party, the decorations, The expensive venue, the guests. For the first time in years, she realized none of it would have happened without me. And now, she was completely on her own. Across town, Emma and I were finishing dessert. She smiled at me and asked, "So what's next?" I smiled back. "Now, we build a life where nobody gets to decide your worth." What I didn't know was that before the party ended, Mom was about to make one last desperate phone call. The party was over. Most of the guests had already left. The music had stopped. The decorations were still hanging, but the celebration was gone. Mom sat alone at one of the tables, staring at the stack of legal papers. For the first time in my life, she looked scared. Not embarrassed. Not angry. Scared. Dad finally broke the silence. "Linda, did you really tell Emma she wasn't family?" She didn't answer. Jessica crossed her arms. "This isn't the time for that." Dad looked at her. "No, I think this is exactly the time." Nobody said another word. A few minutes later, my phone rang. "Mom?" I looked at the screen for a second before answering. Her voice was completely different. No attitude, no fake sweetness, just panic. "Sarah, we need to talk." I stayed quiet. She took a deep breath. "I made a mistake." Those 4 words would have meant everything, a week ago. Now, they felt empty. I asked one question. "Did you call because you miss Emma, or because you miss my money?" Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't realize how much you were doing for us." I closed my eyes. "That's the problem, Mom. You never tried to." She started crying. Real tears this time. "I never wanted this to happen." "No?" I asked calmly. "Then why did you let my daughter believe she didn't belong?" She couldn't answer, because there wasn't one. After another long pause, she said, "Can we just forget everything and start over?" I looked across the room. Emma was sitting on the couch reading her favorite book. Peaceful, happy, the happiest she'd looked in days. Then I answered, "We can start over." Mom sounded relieved. "Oh, thank God." "But," I continued, "we're starting over without the old rules. No more paying your bills. No more fixing everyone's problems. And no one ever makes Emma feel unwanted again." She sniffled. "So, you'll come back?" I smiled sadly. "No, I'm moving forward." The line went quiet. Before hanging up, I said one last thing. "I hope one day you become the grandmother Emma deserved." Then, I ended the call. I set my phone on the table. Emma looked up from her book. "Was that Grandma?" I nodded. She thought for a moment before asking, "Are you sad?" I smiled. "A little. But mostly, I feel free." That night, for the first time in years, I slept without worrying about anyone else's problems. Because sometimes, the strongest boundary isn't yelling. It's quietly walking away. 6 months passed. Life became peaceful. There were no late-night phone calls asking for money. No guilt trips. No family drama. Just me and Emma. And honestly, I'd forgotten what peace felt like. Emma was doing better than ever. She joined the school's soccer team, made the honor roll, started smiling again. One afternoon, I picked her up after practice. She jumped into the car with the biggest grin. "Mom!" I scored 2 goals. I laughed. "I knew you would." Then she said something that caught me off guard. "You know, I don't think about Grandma anymore." I looked at her, not because I was surprised, but because she sounded free. Children heal faster than adults. As long as someone teaches them they're worth loving. That evening, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Dad. I answered. "Hi, Dad." His voice sounded older. "Tired. Can we meet?" The next afternoon, we met at a small diner. He looked thinner than I remembered. After ordering coffee, he looked down at his hands. "I owe you an apology." I stayed quiet. "I knew your mother treated Emma differently. I just kept telling myself it wasn't that bad." He sighed. "I should have spoken up. You shouldn't have had to protect your own daughter from us." For the first time, I saw genuine regret. Not excuses, not blame, just regret. "I appreciate you saying that." He nodded. "Your mother, she's different now." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "She sold her jewelry." I looked confused. "To pay the property taxes." He gave a small, sad smile. "Turns out, owning a house is expensive." Neither of us laughed. After a long silence, he reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small envelope. "I think this belongs to Emma." I opened it. Inside were a few $100s. "It's from your mother. She wanted me to give it to Emma." I looked up. "For what?" Dad swallowed hard. "She said it's 12 years of birthday money she should have given her." I stared at the envelope. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. You can't put a price on a child's broken heart. I gently slid the envelope back across the table. "No." Dad looked surprised. "Emma doesn't need their money. What she needed was their love." He slowly nodded. "I know." As I stood to leave, Dad quietly said, "She misses both of you." I smiled politely. "I hope she does, because sometimes missing someone is the consequence of never appreciating them when they were standing right in front of you, and for the first time in a very long time." I walked away without looking back. A week after meeting my dad, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, nobody was there, just a small envelope resting on the welcome mat. No stamp, no return address. I already knew who it was from. Inside was a handwritten letter. My mom's handwriting. I stood in the hallway for a long moment before opening it. The first line read, "Dear Sarah, I finally understand." I kept reading. She admitted she'd spent years comparing me to Jessica. She admitted she'd punished me for leaving home, for building a life without her, for proving I didn't need her approval. Then came the sentence I never thought I'd read. "I took my anger toward you out on Emma, and she never deserved that." I closed my eyes. For years, that was all I'd wanted her to admit. Not for me, for my daughter. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote, "If Emma ever wants to see me again, I'll spend the rest of my life earning that chance." Not asking, earning. There was a difference. That evening, Emma came home from soccer practice. She noticed the letter sitting on the kitchen counter. "Is that from Grandma?" I nodded. She looked at it for a few seconds, then looked back at me. "Did you read it?" "I did." "Is she sorry?" I thought carefully before answering. "I think she finally understands what she did." Emma was quiet. Then she asked, "Do I have to forgive her?" I smiled and shook my head. "No, sweetheart. Forgiveness is a gift. You only give it when you're ready." She smiled. "I'm not ready." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That's okay. You don't owe anyone your peace." Months later, life looked completely different. Our weekends were filled with soccer games, movie nights, and little road trips. Our house felt lighter. There was laughter again, not because everything had been fixed, but because we had stopped chasing people who never valued us. Sometimes people ask if I regret walking away from my family. The answer is simple: no, because I didn't walk away from family. I walked away from being used. And in doing that, I gave my daughter something far more valuable than an invitation to a birthday party. I gave her permission to never beg for a seat at someone's table. Instead, I taught her to build her own. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you that real family is built on love, not obligation, take a moment to like this video. And if you enjoy powerful family drama stories with unexpected twists and satisfying endings, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. We upload brand new emotional stories every week. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never let anyone make you feel like you have to earn your place at the table. See you in the next story.